Hey everyone, so this is another overanalyzing video. Instead, it's overanalyzing Glalie. And don't get me wrong, his stats are horrible, even his Mega Evolution doesn't make up for it entirely. But he still is a pretty cool Pokemon, so wanted to share him with everybody. So, yeah, that being said, in order to talk about Glalie, probably should talk about the rest of the family because that's what makes him so odd compared to them. So Frostlass originally started off just being talked about as kind of like a predatory Pokemon that people just kind of saw as a ghost. You know, like how ancient Greek myths portrayed spiders as like originally human. Frostlass was kind of the same thing. Then going sun and moon and then forward, Frostlass is basically confirmed to be a dead woman from some kind of mountainous region. And so it kind of makes it weird because, this is the first one starting off with. She's predatory, she is a ghost, and then we go to Snowrunt. And so Snowrunt is the next one, and pre evolution of Frostlass, which of course gets weird because he's talked about as like a natural Pokemon, not as much as Frostlass as a paranormal entity. And so he does have some parts, like he's talked about as like a good luck charm, that if you see him when he enters your house, you'll be prosperous, and so will your future generations. But if you see him outside, then that means that an impending blizzard is happening. And so, kind of weird. I mean, you have some parts that definitely get rid of that myth, such as in Sun and Moon, they discuss that rich people talk about it as a staple of having Snowrunt in their house. So it could be, well, you already were prosperous and you just were able to afford a Snowrunt, so other people talk about it as a good luck charm. But in order for there to actually be Frostlass, at least what I'm proposing is it's actually a little bit of that like stone tape theory, which is just another one of those random, superstition stuff that if something such as a stone at the site of where a person would have become a ghost happens, then specific vibrations or specific stuff can set it off to behave like a ghost again and basically be possessed by it. And so I think that's what Snowrunt is. And you can see his black skin, which, why this is relevant, is that Glalie is confirmed to basically be a living boulder, and his skin underneath his ice is the same color as Snowrunt. So perhaps it's just, the stone to evolve Frostlass makes it, kind of, I guess, get possessed. Kind of a weird thing, but then that brings us to even the weirder part of, well, what's for Glalie? And so Glalie's talked about in a very natural version compared to the other two, that you just level up Snowrun, this happens, there's no mythical element to him, he's just a fact of this world. And in Sun, and the only time, they mentioned that he is a boulder of like a hiker that got stranded in a mountain, stayed on that boulder, and died. And that's the only time. The other ones do confirm, yes, he is a boulder, so you could say that possibly it is a case of stone tape theory, that Snowrunt is just too small to really have any vibrations, and as he gets older, he becomes this. But I do think the motion part's kind of interesting. Snowrunt's positive to humans, Frostlass is kind of negative towards humans, and then you have Glalie, who he honestly just doesn't like really care much about humans. But either ways, on to the next part. So going on into the environment, because it does shape a lot about the Snowrunt family. So they live in very, very cold regions. It has to be somewhat of a mountainous region, just even for, I guess, Glalie and Snowrunt to have the possibility of forming, and probably very far away from stuff, because if people have to die in order to create them, then that means it has to be far away from resources. So low on lots of stuff, and along with it, it's going to be an area that kind of gave reason to how they function, with air being easier to freeze kind of at these like higher altitudes, I guess. That's kind of how they get most of their prey, both Frostlass and Glalie. Snowrunt, I don't know, he's just kind of talked about in a different version compared to the others, so maybe he's an omnivore. And so on to behavior, he's kind of talked about as blunted, like you never hear of strong emotions, maybe mild annoyance, and that's just even from, oh, his jaw got snapped off in his, like, mega evolution. And so the one reason behind this could be his environment. Environments like that usually promote isolationism, and so isolationist animals usually don't show many emotions because that would be vulnerability, and that doesn't work good. He's slow moving because he has to preserve energy in order to find the next available target, and it's suggested he probably has to wait to a certain degree because he has to freeze these things. He has to find stuff that he can freeze, even if it is instant. He has to wait until he can get them off guard. And he might be vulture like. I mean, he's basically just freezes anything and eats it, so he's not very particular about what he wants. So on to his diet. I mean, I already talked about kind of that like opportunistic version, like vultures, and he probably is a carnivore. I mean, he's always freezing prey, so that suggests that. Along with it, if you're going to be in harsh environments, then you need a lot of energy instantly when you find it, which probably would mean he has to be a carnivore in the mountains. And he possibly has to eat stuff covered in ice in order to kind of reform some of his armor. You know how there's like snails that they have to eat like some iron stuff in order to create their iron scales again. And so that could be him. Another possibility is that he's actually just like a koala. Koalas only recognize eucalyptus leaves if they're on a branch. He only recognizes food if it's frozen, which I guess kind of would say that he's acting almost just instinctual when he freezes stuff, not as much meaning to, but either ways, I think it's also interesting to note just that harsh environments do create like drastic adaptations, and so you just see it in his general way, like covering himself in ice. That's a very drastic thing. That probably does slow him down, slow his metabolism down, and he's kind of big for a Pokemon, which would be a case of possibly like gigantism. If he lives higher than Snorunt's, he could just be kind of closely related to them in that sense. And so animals in harsh ways, like with deep sea gigantism, they get bigger so that way they can avoid predation and basically eat whatever comes across their way. So either ways, I think he's a very interesting Pokemon. So thank you everyone for watching and have a great day.